Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'll call the Missoula City Council meeting of August 9th, 2021 to order. We are this week back in fully remote Zoom webinar format by virtue of uptick in COVID-19 cases around the country and here in Missoula as well. You all have seen the numbers for dialing in or Zooming in. And of course, if you'd like to participate and you're in our audience this evening, you can raise your hand through the Zoom webinar feature or use the *9 feature to raise your hand if you're on the telephone. We have, I'm sorry, unless someone just joined us, we have all council members present except for Ms. Anderson at the moment and Mr. Hess at the moment. With that, we will proceed with the approval of minutes. We have minutes of the meeting of July 26th, and unless there are corrections there, they'll be approved. And seeing none, Ms. Anderson is here for the record. And we'll move on to our schedule of committee meetings. Ms. Rabine.
Just a moment. Getting all kinds of messages flying back and forth here. And I haven't had a chance to pull up the committee schedule. There we go. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see the committee schedule?
We can.
Oh, great. So we're setting up committee meetings for the 11th of August. The Parks and Conservation Committee will meet from 10:55 in the morning to 11:05. Public Works Committee will meet from 11:25 to 12:25. I'm going to just take a second and see if I can make this a little bit bigger on your screen. There we go. And the afternoon meetings, Administration and Finance Committee meets from 12:55 to 1:15, and Budget Committee, the whole meets from 1:30 to 3 o'clock. Now, just like the City Council meeting, all these meetings are being held via Zoom webinar, and you can go to the city's website. If you Google City of Missoula, we'll be right there at the top of your search results. On our page, you can click on the meetings tab in the middle of our page, right below the big photo. And that site contains all of the agendas and minutes for City Council meetings. The information to join each of our webinars is located on each respective meeting's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. Are there any changes to the committee schedule? Mr. Von Lossberg.
Thanks. Not a change. I just wanted to highlight for folks, there was a little change. The morning meetings, Parks and Conservation and Public Works, if you were looking at the agenda, both members, my colleagues and members of the public, on Friday, we bumped those meetings a little earlier to provide a break for lunch. So I just wanted to flag that for folks in case they set their calendar from the Friday email. Parks starts at 10:55, like Marty just showed, and Public Works starts at 11:25. And I think there might be a little lag on those being reflected on the calendar on the website. So we'll get that squared away as well. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Seeing no additional changes, we'll move on to the public comment portion of our agenda. This is your opportunity to comment on items not elsewhere on the agenda this evening. And looking at our attendees list, I do not see any hands raised at the moment. So we have no general public comment this evening. We'll move on to our consent agenda. Items there were approved by council committees for consideration all at once on Monday evening, so we can save a little bit of time. Ms. Rabine will read the list of consent agenda items aloud so those watching will know what we're considering, and we'll take comment on these items before we vote as well. Ms. Rabine.
Ah, there I am. I haven't turned on my camera yet tonight, so let me adjust here just a sec. All right, so tonight's consent agenda has 6 items. And the first is to ratify accounts payable in the amount of $1,022,816.54 for checks that are dated August 3rd of 2021. Number 2 is to approve accounts payable in the amount of $928,748.83 for checks that are dated August 9th of 2021. Number 3 is to authorize the mayor to sign a 3-year contract with Opportunity Resources Incorporated of Missoula, Montana, to provide janitorial services to the city shops and street department facilities at 1305 Scott Street in an amount at an annual cost of $14,446.86. Number 4 is to approve an exemption to Missoula Municipal Code, Chapter 9.30, entitled Noise Control, to permit relief in accordance with Section 9.30.070, entitled Permit from Relief from Noise Level. And it's for specified noise levels for the Reed condominium construction project. Number 5 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with IMEG for that's a local engineering firm for the Lower Rattlesnake pressure reducing valve installation water project in an amount not to exceed $35,370. And number 6 is to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a professional services agreement with IMEG for the North 2nd and Cottonwood water main replacement project at a cost not to exceed $85,140.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. I will note that Mr. Hess is here for the record. Are there questions or comments from council members on the consent agenda? Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologize. I can't get my computer figured out, so I'm on my phone here. But just wanted to know if we could divide the question and vote on 5.2 separately. And may I please speak to that?
5.2 separately?
Yes, please.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm voting no simply because of the $25,000 appraisal for the bridge apartments, although I do appreciate the fact that we're getting an appraisal done. I really appreciate that, actually. And I actually have no doubt that we're probably going to get a good deal, market value deal on this, whatever that might be. I don't think the city should be in the business of owning apartments, and I think that we haven't had quite enough public debate and public comment around this decision yet. I understand that this is just kind of a preliminary move. We're not actually purchasing it with this vote, but still, I don't think the public has been made well enough aware that we're even moving this far forward. So I will not be voting for 5.2 because of that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Jones.
Thanks. Happy to be voting for 5.2 for the bridge apartments. I think the community's been talking about it for about 6 weeks now, so I'm thrilled that we're moving forward. But the point that I wanted to make actually was that in the claims tonight, I think there's about $1,700 going to chip seal for our streets, which is from the gas tax. So great to see that in there. However, I'm very sorry that we will not be seeing more of these claims because the legislature eliminated the gas tax that the community voted in last year. I feel like I've been fielding a lot of questions recently regarding property taxes and the fact that we do not have a diverse tax base. And as a result, everything comes back to property taxes. So it's just very frustrating when we are trying to use other tools to diversify our tax base and get some dollars out of all of the tourists driving through Missoula, which there have been a lot this summer. That unfortunately will not be available next year. So I recommend people contact their legislature if they would like to have a more diverse tax base. Thanks.
Thanks, Ms. Jones. Seeing no further comment from council members, anyone in the attendees care to comment this evening? And seeing no hands there, Ms. Rabine will have a roll call vote on items 5.1 through and 5.3 through 5.6, please.
Okay, on the consent agenda, last item 2, Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Hart,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 12 ayes.
Thank you. And on item 5.2, please.
All right, item 5.2, this is the second set of claims or accounts payable. Hang on. Anderson,
Yes.
Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
No.
Hart,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt,
Yes.
Ramos,
No.
Cheryl,
Yes.
Vasika,
No.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That is 9 ayes and 3 nays.
And the consent agenda is approved. Ms. Rabine, at your convenience, would you make me a co-host, please? We'll move on to comments from city staff, agencies, boards, commissions, authorities, and the community forum, of which we have none this evening, nor do we have any special presentations. We do have a public hearing tonight. State law and council rules set guidelines for inviting comment in a formal way on a variety of issues, and following a staff report on each, the council and I will invite comment. During COVID-19, our practice has been to hold public hearings open for a week after the initial staff presentation, and then voting the following week under final consideration. Our lone public hearing this evening is on the annual assessments for Street Maintenance District number 1, and that's downtown Missoula. And Ms. Rabine has our staff report this evening.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Marty Rabine. I'm the Legislative Services Director and City Clerk for the City of Missoula, and I think I have been presenting a similar staff report to this one my entire career here at the city. So Street Maintenance District number 1 started out as a sprinkling district at the turn of the century to water the downtown dirt streets. And it has evolved into a street sweeping / trash, rubbish, and recycling program for the downtown area. So most of the city streets get swept on a regular basis, but downtown streets get swept every single week, which is a little more often than other city streets. So it's a special service that's provided to folks who own property downtown compared to general property taxpayers. In addition, all of the garbage cans and recycling bins that you see downtown and composting bins too, I think now, are paid for. The pickup of those cans is done by the Downtown Business Improvement District, and the city contracts with them for that service. Their contract is paid for from the proceeds of this district. So this year, the trash and rubbish removal and recycling part of this district remains unchanged, but we are anticipating a 2.64% increase over last year for the street sweeping part of the district. As many of you know, we have drivers that are in the trucks, in the street sweeping vehicles, and they have wage increases that are coming on. And so this proposed increase is to cover the cost of those wages. So this year's proposed assessment is totaling $135,543. And I am here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. With that, I will open the public hearing, noting that it will remain open for a week until council takes this up for final consideration. And see no hands up among attendees. Questions or comments from council members? Seeing none, we will wait till next week for a final answer on this question. Next, we do have an item for final consideration. These are items that were heard in public hearing and now are being considered for resolution this evening by the Missoula City Council. And our lone item for final consideration is an ordinance to amend impact fee chapter 15.66 of the Missoula Municipal Code. And Ms. Jones, if I could trouble you for a motion.
I would be happy to. I would like to make the recommended motion, which is to adopt an ordinance amending Missoula Municipal Code Chapter 15.66 entitled Development Impact Fee Procedures and Requirements to change references throughout the chapter from development services to community planning, development, and innovation, to amend 15.66.020 and 15.66.030 to update the definition to methodology reports and provide a method for adoption, and amend 15.66.130 to change the membership requirements for the Impact Fee Advisory Committee to conform with state law. And I'll speak to it briefly.
Ms. Jones.
This is basically housekeeping to clean up this ordinance with new language and state law. So I'll keep it brief, but it was very straightforward, and Dale presented on it, and I think it's basically housekeeping. So very straightforward tonight.
Thank you. All right, with that motion is in order. Is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Anyone in the audience care to comment this evening on this item? And seeing no hands up there, we will have a roll call vote.
Okay, on the ordinance, Becerra,
Yes.
Contos,
Yes.
Harp,
Yes.
Hess,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Merritt, Ramos,
Yes.
Cheryl, got it. Vasika,
Yes.
Von Lossberg,
Yes.
and West.
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
any of you care to change your vote? That is 12 ayes and no nays.
Thank you. And the changes are approved. Apologize, my dog goes off at the worst times. We have no additional items for final consideration. I'll pass on communications from the mayor. We'll begin council comments with Mr. Von Lossberg this evening.
Mayor, if I might suggest, if there's no objection, could we do council comments after committee reports? We've got the JEDI resolution and another item under committee reports, and I think that there's a staff report, and I would make that request.
That without objection, happy to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, all right then, we will move on to committee reports, of which we have two this evening. We'll take those in order. The first is a resolution establishing the city's commitment to a just, equitable, diverse, and inclusive Missoula. And our staff report this evening comes from Ms. Gockler.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. My name is Donna Gockler, Director, City Missoula Parks and Recreation. I am speaking to you today on behalf of all of the city, not just the Parks and Recreation Department. This is a all department and leadership resolution. We have made an initial presentation at the January 28th committee meeting. And then we have held open on Engage Missoula for comments. We have been receiving some comments, many in support, many not quite understanding, and then of course a few opposed. So what we hope to do this evening is better define exactly what this resolution means and what it can mean. And we have three presenters, myself, and I'll close out the presentation. We also have with you today Ashley Brittner Wells. She's our Bacchus Fellow who has been working diligently to help put together all of the work in partnership with the other cohorts, which are represented by Missoula County Public Schools, Rob Watson, All Nations Health Center, Sky McGinty, city and county health departments with Deshane Barnett and Lisa Biskevich, Partnership Health with Lori Francis, Executive Director, who will also be speaking tonight. We also have representatives from the University of Montana, and then of course, Jamar Galbraith with the county. So it's a well-rounded group of folks. The cohort is part of the National League of Cities receiving technical assistance, but we define our own path, and our community defines where we want to go. This is not driven by the National League of Cities. They are available to us with resources and technical assistance and nothing more or less. And so what I'd like to do initially is with your support is Ashley is going to start with the presentation. We're going to try and explain the resolution, what equity and diversity and inclusion mean, especially looking at applying public resources, existing or future, through a lens of equity. We're going to take a little bit of a closer or deeper dive with a brief presentation from Lori Francis. She has years of experience applying equity and can share with us where that sometimes works and why we're not there yet and why it matters. I will then close out and be happy to answer any questions. So with that, Ashley, I'll turn it over to you.
Good evening, all. My name is Ashley Brittner Wells. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the City of Missoula National League of Cities JEDI Coordinator. I'm going to share my screen here and present to you a little presentation here. Today, I am presenting the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Resolution. With the Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Resolution, we aim to assess policies and processes that use city resources through a lens of equity, and in the end, better understand if our investments in public resources have maximum benefits for all members of our community. So why do we need a resolution on equity? Because reducing challenges for some increases opportunities for all. Missoula residents share many demographics. We all age. Every economic status lives in Missoula. Most experience a change in ability, at least temporarily in some point in their lives. Most are paying, contributing to our community through taxes or fees. Every resident needs basic services to enjoy a quality of life to fully contribute to our community and our economy. And the resolution provides support and direction for applying community resources so those resources result in the greatest public benefit. This is an overview of City of Missoula demographics. Race and origin is 91.1% white. We have 3.7% Hispanic or Latinx residents in Missoula. 2.2% are Asian alone. 1.6% are American Indian or Alaska Native. 0.8% are Black or African American, and 5.2% of Missoula residents speak a language other than English at home. It's important to note that 17.5% of our residents are in poverty, and 8.8% of residents under age 65 have a disability. As Missoulians, we fall under at least three major areas of diversity or intersectionality: race and ethnicity, age, gender or gender identity, ability, income, and there are many other additional demographics with which most of us will identify. Additionally, 48% of Missoulians have a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to 32% nationally, but only have 75% of the national median household income. 17.5% of Missoula residents are in poverty, compared to 10.5% nationally. Women-owned businesses, there are 31% of Missoula businesses are women-owned, compared to 35% nationally. And 3.4% of Missoula businesses are minority-owned, compared to 29% nationally. This is no surprise to any of you, but this is a historical commitment to equity that the city has already committed to, starting with the 2020-2023 City of Missoula Strategic Plan, establishing a shared responsibility to engage in the work required to dismantle systems of privilege and oppression. We began the Listening, Engaging, Action, Reflection Network, or Learn Missoula, research audit in November of 2020. We were selected as part of the National League of Cities of Opportunity cohort in January. And that cohort began meeting in February and March of this year. We began meeting with a JEDI Advisory Board work group led by Jamar Galbraith at the county on July 19th, and have since had subsequent meetings with that important group. The Missoula County Parallel JEDI resolution was presented to the Board of County Commissioners on July 22nd, and I believe is up for approval this week on Thursday. And then you all heard our first presentation on July 28th for the City of Missoula JEDI resolution. Missoula is one of 7 cities in the country selected to be part of the National League of Cities of Opportunity cohort, turning crisis into pathways to equity and resiliency. As Donna mentioned, the NLC is very helpful in providing technical assistance, resources, and guidance to our cohort. But it is important to note that the city and each partner within our group develops its own path and goals. In terms of public engagement for this resolution, we published the JEDI initiative site to engage Missoula on July 30th. Feedback is supportive, though one resident who self-identified as white stated they would not matter anymore if this resolution was passed. It's important to us to note that that is not an accurate perception of this resolution. We are not asking for a budget for this today. We are asking for approval, supporting diversity, inclusion, and equity efforts. These are strategies that are employed by vibrant communities to ensure everyone has a fair and just access to the resources they need for health, social, and economic well-being. And the city can better position itself to achieve its strategic goals by implementing proven equity practices and policies to address significant inequity in health outcomes and other disparities that decrease the quality of life for many Missoula residents. This illustration illustrates the differences, the kind of nuances between equality, equity, and justice. The boxes here that you see these folks standing on in these photos represent investments that are made within the community. In the equality photo, you see that everyone is provided the same resources and opportunities. And equity provides resources and opportunities based on the individual. And in the justice photo, you'll see that the barriers for all are removed. So all can participate from where they are at to get to a point where we are making better investments in our community, which is the ultimate goal of this resolution. We have some incredible examples in action within our community from partners doing this crucial work and making investments or assessing programs through a lens of equity, which are making very positive impacts in our community. We have the 0 to 5 kindergarten readiness study, which found that a kindergarten readiness assessment demonstrated that while on average, 50% of children in Missoula County arrive ready to learn to kindergarten, in some classrooms, as few as 5% of children are fully ready on day 1. They are looking to expand that study this year to find out why. The Lowell Community School impact, 30% of families in the North and West Side neighborhoods meet the federal poverty level versus 19% in other neighborhoods. So an investment was made in the Missoula Community Center and Food Bank satellite location, fully accessible out-of-school care and mental health services for students, which resulted in the top growth in reading of all MCPS schools at Lowell last year, a 15% increase in kindergarten reading assessment, and a 15% decrease in students who needed high-level behavioral and social emotional support during the school day in the first year of the pilot program. There were a couple of studies and surveys done by the Chamber of Commerce and Bureau of Business and Economic Research, childcare studies last year, that found the losses from the Montana economy caused by inadequate or inaccessible childcare cost $145 million to households and $32 million to taxpayers in Montana in 2019. And in a 2020 survey by the Missoula Chamber of Commerce, 50% of respondents said they scaled back or abandoned their career due to childcare issues, which was a 3% increase from 2018. For a closer look at one example from our community, we have the Executive Director of Partnership Health Center, Lori Francis, who will present a few slides now.
Ashley, thanks for advancing my slides for me. It's nice to be here with you guys. I really appreciate the fact that you all serve on the City Council, regardless of your views, because I would not do that work. And I know it's relatively thankless, so I just want to thank you first and foremost, really, quite from the bottom of my heart for the work you do and thinking so carefully about this community. I'm really excited also about the resolution. It's something Partnership works on all the time. And as you think about what Ashley just showed you, the different boxes, while Partnership can work to achieve health care equity, we can't achieve health equity without the justice piece. And that's where you come into play significantly. I also appreciate the comment from a citizen, the fear that if we advance some, that others will lose. And in fact, the data would show the opposite, that if we advance all, we all will succeed, as will the economy. So I know you guys understand taxes far better than I do. As Ashley said, I am the Executive Director of Partnership Health Center. I've been doing this work at Partnership for 4 years. However, I've been working with federally qualified health centers for about 21 years, and I will share a little bit of that with you in just a bit. Partnership is fortunate to do the work we do. We really like it. We really like each other. We really like the individuals we get to serve. And yet we watch how the societal and structural inequities impact the folks that come to Partnership all the time. So I'm going to share a few slides in just a second. The first couple will have data. I like data, but I understand data does not reach the hearts and minds of any of us. I will then talk a little bit about our mission and vision and a tiny bit about my history, which is not that interesting, but is related to the conversation tonight. So Ashley, if we could move on to the next slide, please. Could it move on to the federal poverty guidelines, please? Mm-hmm. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I didn't see that. So for some of you, I bet you're familiar with this, but I think many it's confusing. That 138 column, 138% of poverty is where the expanded Medicaid population is now included as a result of the ACA or Obamacare. That's why that's blue. It comes from the Medicaid guidelines. The red or the blue arrow points to the 200% of poverty, which is where community health centers in this country and Partnership particularly slide fees to improve access to healthcare. And as you can imagine, if you're living a family of four living on a little over $56,000 a year, the ability to afford food, housing, especially in Missoula right now, educational expenses, and anything else is greatly diminished. Partnership, that is the population we really seek, and you'll see in a slide in just a little bit, we're serving about 15,500 people, a high percentage of whom fall into that category. Next slide, please. This slide is quick breakdown from 2018 that looks at these 5 zip code areas. This is how partnership looks at access and penetration. We look at neighborhoods by zip code, and we have the data to see how many folks within each of those areas we are serving. And as you'll see from this, that is the breakdown of 200% of poverty. So you heard Ashley and Donna reference that 17 to 18% of Missoulians are in poverty. Twice that number are living at 200% of poverty. Again, that means that they have a tough time affording all sorts of normal things that those of us who live above that are able to do. Children in Missoula, again, at 200% of poverty, there's just under 40% of kids in Missoula are living at that level. So almost half of Missoula's kids are struggling to, whose parents are struggling to make sure they can afford all the things that their kids need. You'll move to the next slide, please. This is, let me backtrack for 2 seconds. I wanted to thank you guys because I'm looking at this slide and thinking of all of you. You approved the Missoula Food Bank funding from the Missoula Redevelopment Agency, and I just want to thank you. We opened about a month ago, finally, a 1.5 years late because of COVID. We couldn't open while the food bank was closed, and I want to tell you it's been busy every day, every visit ever since we opened, and we're seeing about 5 to 6 patients a day who haven't been in our healthcare services. So huge win. We have childcare downstairs. It's just been an amazing partnership. Related to that, this slide shows partnership's vision and mission, as well as our values, and those values were selected by our staff. We all need access to healthcare, but as I will talk to you about just as in this slide, is that healthcare is really not enough. And I think you know that, I wouldn't be considering this resolution. Partnership does a very admirable job providing comprehensive, human-centered or patient-driven, accessible and equitable care. We really like doing that. We really like working together. We really, as I said, enjoy the patients we get to serve. A tiny bit about me is that when I was a little kid, I was in the hospital a lot. I had a roommate when I was about 7 or 8 who was from a developing part of the world and had suffered a gunshot wound and had part of her face blown off. And I remember her very well. Her name was Tui. And I remember thinking that, and she was there with all her parents because they couldn't afford to be here. And I remember thinking that when I got older, now much older, I wanted to make sure that people had their parents there and had access to healthcare so that they wouldn't experience those types of horrible issues. I plan to work in developing parts of the world and then realize that places even like Missoula and Montana have plenty of need. Fast forward from there, I decided to go to nursing school after getting a degree in biology and thought that great healthcare in the hospital setting would make a difference. And so I worked in ICU and ER for about a decade and watched us send people back out into their environment, which could have been Missoula. At this point, it was Livingston and Bozeman and also in Maine, and watched them come back in, no better. We fixed them briefly and they came back in, and it was very painful and very difficult. And so subsequently worked with a group of people to start a community health center in Livingston, Bozeman, Belgrade, and West Yellowstone. And really loved that work and felt gratified for about a year or two. And then I realized too, like you already know, but I didn't at that time, that even really amazing primary health care without a financial barrier still didn't improve the lives of the people that we were serving. We were applying larger and larger band-aids. We were making sure they could afford their medication, but we couldn't help them with their educational attainment. We couldn't help them with equal opportunity. We couldn't help them with their housing significantly. We did start childcare on site. We started adult ed on site, and still we were fighting this uphill battle against structural issues. That's my little painful story. It's not very painful in the grand scheme of things, but I will say every year that I'm alive, I keep getting hit with that story over and over, that healthcare, while really wonderful, is not nearly enough. And the work that you guys are talking about tonight is what makes the difference. So let's move to the next slide, please, Ashley. This is a slide we developed. I really like it. It's what looks at what we call downstream and upstream issues, and some of you are familiar with that term. It also is called social determinants of health. And they're not really social, they're structural determinants. It didn't happen because of people's social issues. It happens because of policy decisions by this government. And so we know in the United States that there are issues of poverty and wealth. There are significant issues of racism. We see them in the media all the time, and there are significant issues of sexism. And we see that in the media just yesterday and probably today. So what we know about healthcare is healthcare offered really perfectly. That little person on the left can improve health outcomes by 20%. So if you happen to be fortunate enough to have a house that you're not feeling like you might lose, to live in a safe environment and not feel victim to the people within or outside your walls, to not engage in behaviors that are considered treatment for difficult times, like drinking and smoking, which come out of very difficult circumstances in a way of self-medicating, then healthcare is really incredibly helpful. If, again, your environment is working for you. If your environment isn't working for you, like many of the people we're talking about related to this resolution, and as you guys look at safe outdoor space and added housing, no amount of healthcare will change that significantly the health outcomes of those folks. We can help apply a salve, I would say, really treat people so well when they come in our walls and go out to them when they're not inside, but we can't change their trajectory without your involvement. So I appreciate this resolution, and I think this upstream, downstream diagram may help explain to some folks in the community, I hope, why we are working on these other issues to really address health and well-being in Missoula. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like on the data of partnership if you think about what we just talked about. So those boxes actually reference, we are providing, I think, equitable care, although I think we have work to do. There's still implicit bias within healthcare that's well studied even at places like ours. That circle on the left is the 15,500 people we served last year, which was less than the year before because of COVID. About 12,000, a little over 12,000 are white. About 1,000 are Native American. So about 6% of our population is Native American compared to, I think, Ashley, you said 1.2 or something like that in Missoula. So we see a higher percentage of Native Americans, and then we have about 350 patients are African American. And if you look at the health outcomes are above and below in the green and yellow, you see our colorectal screening isn't horrible, although it could be better all around. And in depression, you'll see Native Americans are more depressed than white folks or African Americans. These are somewhat small sample sizes, so don't take that beyond this conversation. But you probably do know that Native American youth are 7 times more likely to commit suicide compared to a white youth, which feels completely unacceptable. And then the blue and red bars, just briefly, again, the blue shows you the folks we're seeing at partnership, high percentage are living at 200% and below. So back to that 56,000 for a family 4 or less. That's why we're there. And we see a lot of people who have plenty of resources because we offer great care. But looking below, I thought was really intriguing. And the percentage of patients on these are just our patients again, experiencing homelessness. Look how high the African American bar is in comparison to the income bar above. And look that it's interesting, the Native American is a bit lower, but still twice the white folks. So if you look at, I think that speaks to the difference in wealth, not income, and also racism. And so this country, we know that there's been years of discrimination around housing and loans and GI Bill for certain populations in this country and not for white individuals. So I don't actually know the reason. I'm curious what you guys think about that, but that's my guess. And then we also have a equity lens that we look at for 17 different health outcomes. And then we've also created a vaccine equity lens, which I'm happy to show you at any point to see how we're doing with homeless folks, BIPOC folks, LGBTQI, and to see if our penetration in vaccines is equivalent on all fronts. It's not, and we're creating a Native American Patient and Family Council with the help of our new Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Coordinator, Leo John Bird, and we'll redesign our healthcare based on what we learned from that group. Next slide, please. These are just some Montana slides, not just, but this looks at poverty in Montana by race. So that's, I mean, I think this, I appreciated the earlier slides from Donna and Ashley. When you think about, we drill down for race, which is the equity lens, you see huge differences. And I doubt this surprises you, but it feels very unacceptable to me. And the next one is to look at homelessness by minority status and or minority identity. And again, Native Americans are 6 times as likely as white folks to be homeless. This is not controlled for income. So that slide I showed you with partnership is those are low income whites in comparison to low income African Americans and low income Native Americans. This is all whites on this slide. So far less likely to be homeless because whites are less poor, relatively speaking. I think the only thing I'd say to end this is that zero-sum thing, the idea that I get that people are afraid. I think we've seen that in this country and in this community. And yet when all people do better, so do poor white people will do better as a result of the work that you guys are focusing on. It's not just about people of color or LGBTQI community. It's truly about all people. And I like that, and I won't go into it now, but there's the curb cut effect that Donna and I talked about, and you can discuss it later, that when you help some, you actually help all. And that is all I have to say right now. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Laurie. We have, I just want to touch on a few more examples. And what we're really trying to do is share how many of the partners in our community are already doing this work, and that we've done a lot of work as a community in measuring the disparities. The challenge now comes in what do we do about it, and how do we lift everyone up? Invest Health has done good work, and some examples are as simple as taking an existing housing and make it livable, so that the individual living in that housing isn't experiencing greater illness, more visits to a hospital or emergency care. And in the end, that's not only good for them, but it's good for all of us as it relates to costs. Reaching Home, we've already touched on many of the efforts with Reaching Home and the disparity in numbers. And then it occurred to me, having been involved in public work of this nature for many years, that when the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990, I remember there was this huge uproar. Oh my gosh, this is just going to cost society an endless amount of money for absolutely no reason. And today we know, as Laurie mentioned, the curb cut effect. People will literally go out of their way to get to a facility that's more accessible. We believe that if we can truly, as a city, look at our policies, that we will be able to find those places where the curb cut effect matters for everybody. So going on to the next slides, Ashley, resolution and the community benefits. The resolution is really a city resolution. It's a resolution by the city council directing our work. We want to look at our policies and process to make sure that they support effective and efficient spending of tax dollars. Make sure that those dollars are being spent where they're having the greatest benefit to give everybody an opportunity, very much like the slide of the one individual who had 2 boxes, and now we can all participate through equal opportunity. Determine how the city can also support workforce. The Missoula Economic Partnership noted that with the declining working age populations, a community that is equitable will, by definition, create the broadest possible pool of talent to accept jobs from employers in the community. We know that a huge majority of employers in Missoula are short employees. We get that a lot of that has to do with retirement. It has to do with the pandemic, but it has to do with childcare. It has to do with housing. It has to do with education. And if we can make those investments, that's an investment for our business, which because we survive as a community on property taxes is a good thing for all of us. We have the ability as a city to convene partners and businesses to better analyze the needs that are not being met for some residents in our community and figure out how to best provide support. And of course, we have to engage community residents. We need to understand what it is that our residents need. We cannot simply prescribe what works for me has got to work for you. We are all different, and that's what we want to do through the public engagement process. Next slide. We believe that some of this work can include training employees and training leaders to better understand how sound investments in equity can result in positive results for local business, local families, and our environment. We can determine why some residents may not be receiving services. Through some of our more recent community outreach, we have had so many residents who have felt disengaged thank us for coming to their place to talk about community opportunities, because by and large, all residents want to contribute. All residents want to take care of themselves and their families. They're not looking for handouts. People are looking for equal opportunity. We want to identify where existing resources can be redirected for greater net public benefit. And we also want to develop the measures so we know that the work we're doing matters, and it matters where it was intended. So the resolution supports the maximization of public resources with the intention of investing for desired incomes. It does foster justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion so that our boards, our council, our commissions, our employees reflect our community, and our businesses reflect our community. We want to review and revise policies, procedures, processes, and engagement to better reflect equity and justice and diversity and inclusion to ensure equitable delivery of all City of Missoula services. We want to identify and establish tools for measuring those things. We want to establish community engagement. We want to align efforts with partners. This is really about a good, strong community, a good city council with good leadership at every level, taking a close look at not always doing business the same old way, but figuring out how we can do business in a better way for a better tomorrow for everybody. We know from research that when we work to reduce challenges for some, we do indeed increase opportunity for all. We will continue to update the Engage Missoula website. We have a lot more graphics and detail from what you saw today. And we look forward to your input and are absolutely available for questions. Thank you for your time.
And thank you all very much for that really thoughtful presentation with regard to the resolution. Now, my understanding is that council's preference this evening is to hold any decision making until next week. We'll hear from anyone in the audience this evening, and we'll be open to comment through the week. And this item will be presented for final consideration at our next regular meeting on Monday evening. Is that correct? Great, thank you. With that, I don't see anyone in the audience interested in participating at the moment, but I do have council hands up, and Ms. Jones.
Right, thank you. And I just wanted to note that I'm not sure the public always understands that they have to raise their hand, but it looks like they're starting to raise hands now. I did have a couple of questions. And first of all, I appreciate the presentation and all of the information. It, by drilling down into those specifics and the data, it really helps to paint the picture of what we need to address in this community. I did have a question though. With the entire pandemic, I thought Missoula did a good job of cooperation and communication with kind of the institutional leaders in this community of county, city, University of Montana, MCPS, county health, city county health, all these different entities. And we had, because we tried to be on the same page, I think we had better results than some other counties, frankly, in Montana. And so I just was hoping one of you could speak a little bit more to that, because from the way this is being discussed, it sounds like a very collaborative effort between all of these entities. And I think that exponentially creates a better result in the long run. So could you just speak to that, please?
I'd be happy to. You are absolutely correct. we, by working together, the reason the cohort, which is an unofficial cohort, very similar to during the pandemic, very much representative by many of our leaders. So MEP, Missoula Economic Partnership, is engaged in doing equity work. There's got to be 3 to 4 dozen nonprofits engaged in equity work today. By having the city and the county pass parallel resolutions, we are, in fact, committing to working together. We're working with Missoula County Public Schools, University of Montana, and all of our partners in health, All Nations Partnership, Missoula City County, and others. We've also been started some outreach to residents, and I really feel like the pandemic has shown us that we have the ability to build capacity, to better serve those who need it. I think about the way the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club initially set up childcare, and soon thereafter the city of Missoula set up day camps, and the difference that made for our families and their ability to continue to go to work, to take away that one inequity of lack of childcare to keep our community going is just one example that I'm so familiar with. When you think about everybody being on the same page, as mentioned, around managing for the transmission of the coronavirus, we did so much better than most. And that in the end saves us all money, keeps our businesses moving forward. Our businesses did really well, quite frankly, during the pandemic, but right now we're really short employees. So I think that the opportunity is now. I think we've learned a lot from the pandemic, and I think we can only get better from here.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Valesper.
Thanks. I recognize we'll be taking this up under final consideration next week when we have a motion, but I wanted to use the opportunity, of course, to thank Donna and Ashley again, but in particular to thank Lori Francis from Partnership on behalf of Council for joining us. It's very helpful, to put it mildly, to hear the material and data and narrative. We don't get to see you often enough, so thank you. And also great to hear about the location at the food bank. So wonderful to hear that news. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional questions or comments from council members, we do have 2 hands up at the moment in the attendees box, and I've got Joe Lose. Joe, can you? Joe, can you hear us? Oh, Jana, I've got you now.
Can you hear me?
I can, thank you.
Okay, I'm Jana Staton, S-T-A-T-O-N. I'm calling in to support the Jetty resolution. I want to say that we moved to Missoula from Washington, D.C. to raise our daughter here because we felt that Missoula represented the values we wanted to teach her, and that has turned out to be true. I see this resolution asking that we be willing to measure our progress in accomplishing the goals, not just put out a resolution that says we're all for them. I'm sure we are. And my work in the community with refugee families has shown me the benefit of the diversity for all of us. My work with Partners for Reintegration has shown me the need for justice for those in the criminal justice system. And my work with Family Promise and the Missoula Interfaith Collaborative has made clear that we need equity and inclusion in accessing housing and healthcare for low income and increasingly for senior citizens who are living on very limited incomes. And as I look ahead, I really don't want to live in a community that is satisfied with a kind of Darwinian survival of the fittest. I think we're in danger of that. Those who have more money and who are whiter, as I am, most connected or educated are going to get all the goodies. There's land, there's services, and my new priority, which is tree cover, which is an equity issue, and housing. And everyone else just has to take what's left or move out. So I really want to commend the council for taking this seriously and bringing it before the city. And I hope that you will vote to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stett. And Joe, we have you as well. Joe Los?
Yes, a little bit of internet trouble here, but I hope you hear me now.
We can hear you, sir. You bet.
I have worked for a number of years as a volunteer housing advocate in Missoula, and very much have seen the need for this kind of resolution. So I want to thank you for your leadership in proposing this resolution to commit to a just, equitable, diverse and inclusive Missoula community. And while I imagine you will get opposition from those who would deny the history of the forced removal of the Salish and Kalispel people from this valley, the truth of that legacy that we have all inherited and that many of us have actually benefited from cannot in the end be denied. So I really appreciate you starting your leadership in starting the resolution at that point. I'm also thankful you did not stop there and have included proposals to work collaboratively to establish a roadmap to move us forward toward greater equity and to engage all of us in this work. Equally important is your proposal to identify and develop tools for measuring progress. Those plans and those tools for measuring progress will be, I think, critical to making this resolution more than a feel-good statement. So thank you again for your leadership and this opportunity to comment.
Thank you, sir. I see no additional hands up among attendees, but we're back to council. Ms. Becerra.
Sorry, thank you so much for the opportunity. I don't have many questions. I have the opportunity to ask a lot of questions of Donna and Aaron and Ashley. So I want to thank them for all the answers that you have given me. And I also want to point out that every whereas statement on that resolution has been well researched and is found on facts that we can easily point to in all of our documents. So I just want to thank you for the thoughtfulness and for the thoroughness on establishing the case for why this resolution is needed. Donna, I'm just wondering if you know if other members of that cohort of cities are at the same stage right now of developing resolutions, or do you know how they're moving to achieve some of these goals?
Each community that's a member of the cohort and receiving technical assistance is really taking their own path. Some are very focused on singular issues. For example, the city of Houston is solely looking at green infrastructure and how green infrastructure and equity, basically investment in green infrastructure is an investment in equity. So it's really through their public works department. Other communities are looking at housing and homelessness. Some are looking at health. Some might be more focused on LGBTQIA plus populations. So there's quite a variety, and that's been super interesting. And Missoula is unique as a cohort because we are more rural, we are more white. There are other small communities, but each community chooses their path. And so they're not all necessarily on resolutions at this point. They may be in very different places. They may have passed resolutions years ago and are really focusing in on a project now.
And we do have a caller with a hand raised in our attendees, and caller, last four digits of your number are easy for me. 1234.
Hi, yeah, my name is Peggy Schmidt, and I wanted to leave a brief comment. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you, Peggy.
All right, yeah, I will keep it brief, but I just want to say that I'm glad that Missoula is taking a leadership position on this issue, and I like the collaborative nature of the effort. So thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. seeing no additional hands up among attendees nor among council members, again, thank you for the thoughtful presentation this evening. I too always have to have Lori Francis join us. She brings us something interesting every time, as do all of our staff members and partners in the community. This is great work, and we're moving forward in a thoughtful and systematic way. And I think that is important for the sustainability of the effort. So thanks again, and look forward to final consideration on this question next week. Our second committee report this evening comes from the Parks and Conservation Committee, and Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks. So I would like to make the recommended motion to appoint Jonathan Carlin to serve as a regular member and reappoint Chris Rowe as a regular member on the Energy and Climate Team for terms beginning August 1st, 2021 and ending on July 31st, 2024. And I would like to speak to that motion if that's okay.
Ms. Cheryl.
Great. So I first want to say that we had a lot of great candidates for this position. And I just, as I said in committee meeting, I'm just endlessly thankful for those that are willing to serve and engaged as our constituents. So we also had a pretty robust committee discussion and debate around this. And again, I appreciate that with my colleagues. You know, we held this decision off in committee for a couple of weeks. So we had an opportunity to review the makeup of the current committee. So we did do that. It's been a real process, and I appreciate the deliberations. You know, we discussed diversity on the committee. We discussed what kind of skill set we needed. And, you know, as I look as the council member that is overseeing this committee and involved in the committee, and I look at the history, granted it preceded my tenure, you know, this committee was formed long before we had Climate Smart Missoula, long before we had the climate action specialist for the city. So it has been kind of a process of reimagining how this committee is going to work with what is existing now, because it has changed over the years. And so my reason for, after doing the interviews, and as I have said, I felt like we had a lot of strong candidates, but after doing the interviews, I felt like Jonathan was going to be kind of bring some level of organizational structure, and I thought he would be a good, some soft skills that I felt like he had, I felt like would be a really good addition to moving this committee forward. In addition, I would like to speak to Chris Rowe, who has been just a rock star. He is the chair of the committee. We meet regularly just to discuss what agenda items are and how we're restructuring it. So I don't think there was as much discussion around Chris, but I would like to take this opportunity to thank him for his years of service, and just to feel like his leadership is going to take us to the next level. As far as next level, I guess, like figuring out where this committee is going to go and how this committee is going to be incorporated into the new structure as we move forward. Climate, obviously, we're enjoying a very smoke-free day for the last couple of days, but I know that it is painfully on people's mind right now. So I think having this committee function at the highest possible level is critical moving forward. So I would appreciate everyone supporting this.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl, and Ms. Hart on the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. As Amber spoke to, we did have a lot of discussion, debate around the composition of this particular energy and climate team. And I really appreciate the context in which that you spoke to, Amber. I would like to make another alternative member candidate to this, or sorry, I'd like to appoint somebody else. And Mayor, I'd like the opportunity to put that on the floor, and whether it's a friendly amendment or another motion later on. I'd like to hear what you'd like to say there, or how you would like to move forward.
Why don't you propose the amendment, and then Ms. Cheryl can either accept or not accept it as friendly, depending on her mood.
Thanks. I'd like to move that we appoint Chad Bauer to the Energy and Climate Team as the newest member, and reappoint Chris Rowe to the Energy and Climate Team.
And Ms. Cheryl.
I first want to point out that I am in a good mood, so that is not going to affect how I feel about this. And Heather, I appreciate it, and I appreciate that you have been speaking on behalf of your support of him. And I think he is, as I said, I think he's an excellent candidate. I would like to stick with my original amendment. So I don't know exactly what the process is, but I don't want to accept that as a friendly amendment because it is a major change to my amendment itself.
So Ms. Harp has proposed an amendment, and that amendment is in order, and we will now take comment on the motion to amend. Comment on Ms. Harp's motion to amend. All right, I see no hands up there. Anyone in the audience care to comment on the motion to amend? Raise your hand. See no hands.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Ramos on the motion to amend.
Yeah, I apologize. I was a little late to the punch on that, but I just wanted to speak briefly. I should have saved my comments on Wednesday for tonight, knowing that I'd have to repeat everything, but alas, I did not, so I will try and duplicate what I could. So I just wanted to speak to Ms. Harp's motion. I think that Jonathan's certainly a good candidate, but unfortunately, I don't necessarily agree that he really adds a lot to the team. I think that he has a lot of skills that are duplicated, which are great skills, don't get me wrong. But I think that Chad brings something really unique to the team. I think that all this climate action, all that stuff is great in theory, but I think that what we're missing and what a lot of communities are missing around the climate front is being able to put those theories and those ideas and those plans into action. And I think somebody like Chad Bauer, who works in Missoula's only waste management company, I think adds an incredible amount to the team because he can actually work within his company and work within other businesses on how to show them how they can not only make these climate goals a reality, but how they can also improve profitability, improve business, improve job creation by implementing these different goals. I think this is something that's always been kind of missing from different climate action groups is, okay, we've got the great theory, but now how do we take this theory and make it a reality? And I think that Chad certainly is a practical guy. I think he's a great American, really nice man. And I think he would add just a ton of diversity of thought to the team that otherwise I think is more in unison, which is fine to a certain level. But conservatives have good ideas too. And I think that Chad would just be a great addition to the climate team. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. West on the motion to amend.
Thank you. Things are a little bit choppy on my end, so hopefully it's not me. I just wanted to say that I'm not going to support this amendment to add Mr. Bauer to the slate of candidates. I think historically he has worked very closely with our climate action specialist, and I feel like he often already is a person in the room because he does work for the only landfill and waste hauler we currently have in this area. So I feel like he already has a seat at the table in many of these conversations, and I don't think it would necessarily be appropriate to also have him here. So just because he already has a large voice on what happens in our community, I guess in the form of a representative for his company. So thanks.
Thank you, Ms. West. And Ms. Hart, did you want to speak further to your motion?
I would like to do that. Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this team as it exists today is how I came to the recommendation that I did. If we want to change the purpose of this team, I feel like we should do that before we start naming people to a team that we haven't figured out its purpose. But the purpose of it is to aid in the community-wide education and communications of energy efficiency opportunities that minimize greenhouse gas generation, and to monitor and lead generation efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction initiatives. These are lofty goals that require pragmatism, and pragmatism requires actual practical experience. Having gone through the hiring process myself at least 4 times over the course of the last year and a half, trying to find good candidates for the firm that I work for, while also putting together effective teams to tackle housing, I've added 2 of my city council members to those two of those teams for that very purpose, because they cross sectors, they cross industries, they cross lived experience and personal philosophies. I did this because I find value including the voices of those I disagree with. This is inclusion, that very part of justice, equity, diversity, inclusion, that resolution we were just talking about. It is time that we implement both of those, and we can do so simultaneously. Joe Biden is my president, and he has asked us, including local leaders, to do all that we can to tackle climate change. He has also spoken at length about unifying our nation. So how can we work towards climate change actions as well as unification at the same time? Well, let's think about how we can build this team better. And as I looked at the 5 candidates that were before us, all very wonderful people, 3 people I recognize and I disclose I don't know anything about personally, whether it's Louisa Amos, Riley Meyer Putnam, or Jonathan Carlin. I know some of my colleagues have great commendations of those individuals. But I do know Jenny Dixon. I've known her for almost 20 years. And at one point, she was a client of mine. She's done some house sitting for me. I think she's a wonderful person and a really great land use planner. But I also have known Chad Bauer for the last year and a half. And I have really come to appreciate his point of view in helping me understand a different side of the story when it comes down to climate change. And I think that with his professional experience that touches on education and communications and monitoring and energy efficiency initiatives, he has what it takes for this particular team. This is an opportunity, I believe, that we can actually really dive deep into the implementation of the strategies that we are trying to achieve while simultaneously working on crossing the political divide to get us there. I know this is unconventional. I know it's maybe something that not all of you agree with, but I don't know, I can't think of another opportunity where we can pull in the business community to help lead the actions that need to take place. If we want those lofty goals to actually be achievable, we have to get that buy-in from the business community. We can't lecture them into following those kinds of actions. We need the buy-in. And Chad Bauer is a perfect 2-for-1 candidate for this particular role. Thank you.
All right, any further discussion on the motion to amend? Seeing none, because we're in Zoom, we'll have a roll call vote on the motion to amend.
Okay, on the amendment, start this round with Contos.
Yes.
Harp.
No.
This is on your amendment.
Sorry, yes.
Hess.
No.
Jones.
No.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Cheryl.
No.
Vasika.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
No.
West.
No.
Anderson.
No.
Becerra.
No.
And would any of you like to change your vote? It's 5 ayes and 7 nays.
And the motion to amend fails. We are back to the main motion. Discussion on that motion. Ms. Merritt.
Y'all can probably predict what I'm going to say based on my comments in committee, but I also would like to put forward an amendment. And the amendment that I would like to put forward is to appoint Jenny Dixon and Chris Rowe to the Energy and Climate Team. As a lot of the a lot of the same things that Amber and Heather have said about the candidates that they're supporting. I could also be said about Jenny Dixon. I feel personally that is very important when we have a slate of all well-qualified candidates, that if we have the opportunity to increase the diversity on this committee, that we should do so. The current makeup of the committee, of the appointed members of this committee, are all white men. And I think it's really important to have some different perspective. And if we want to make changes to how this committee is operating, having some different viewpoints is very important to be able to accomplish that, I believe. Ms. Dixon brings her many years of service to our community and experience with implementing policy to the table. And so I highly support Ms. Dixon for this position.
And Ms. Merritt's motion to amend is in order. Is there discussion on that motion? And I have Ms. Becerra.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would be happy to support Julie's motion to recommend Jenny Dixon for that position. Beyond the fact that she is a woman and we need more diversity on that team, I think that her area of expertise intersects very well with climate change. She has over 20 years of land use and zoning experience in Missoula, is well positioned to bring that expertise to the committee, to that team. And so I would be fully supportive of that amended motion. Thanks.
And Ms. Cheryl on the motion to amend.
Yeah, thanks. And again, I think you can see by the two amendments, we had a very robust discussion, and we have some differences in opinions here. I just wanted to point out, and I did this in committee as well. I appreciate the drive for more diversity, and I think when you look at the committee in itself, it is all men for sure. And we did lose a great member that was a woman last year, but I have kind of a key leadership role in that committee, and I'm a woman, and our staff member who has Lee Ratterman, who is really a great force, and really finding her as a new employee, finding her way in that committee, is a woman as well. So I will tell you, on the committee and in a leadership role in that committee, it does not feel like we don't have any women. I just want that to be clear, that that's not the feeling when you are attending those committee meetings.
Thank you, Ms. Cheryl. And further discussion on the motion to amend. See no hands up there. Anyone in the audience care to comment? See none there. We'll have a roll call vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hart.
Thanks. I would just like to say that Jenny Dixon is just a fantastic person. She would be a great person for this particular team. She brings a land use background that is just extraordinary. And I think her current work on trying to work on the county's rezoning project is going to be a tremendous asset for this team.
All right, now seeing no additional discussion, we'll have a roll call vote on the motion to amend.
Okay, this is on the amendment for Jenny Dixon and Chris Rowe. I think we start this round with Harp.
Yes.
Hess.
No.
Jones.
No.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Cheryl.
No.
Vasika.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
No.
West.
No.
Anderson.
No.
Becerra.
Yes.
And Contos.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? It's 5 ayes, 7 nays.
And the motion to amend fails.
I think, would you do a recount, please? I counted 6-6.
That is correct.
Okay. So I have the ayes as Contos, Harp, Merritt, Ramos, and Vasica,
And Becerra.
and Becerra, sorry.
So we're at 6-6.
Correct.
Motion fails on a tie. We're back to the main motion as unamended. Bless you. Further discussion on the main motion. Mr. Hess.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to state, as I have throughout this process, that I'm really pleased with all of the applicants that we have for this. It's really helpful, and it's a good problem for the city to have such an embarrassment of riches with so many good candidates. I couldn't be more pleased to support Jonathan Carlin's appointment to the Energy and Climate team. Jonathan is thoughtful and intelligent. He's a bridge builder. He is, to borrow some words from colleagues earlier, he is a wonderful guy and is going to serve this position well. He is, I thought highly of him before this interview process, but I learned that throughout this interview process that he was able to go to Helena and get a bill passed in a bipartisan manner that is difficult to do in these days. He's a bridge builder. He is thoughtful and fair, and he will serve us well.
And further discussion, Ms. Vasica?
I just have a procedural question. I was under the assumption that if it's a 6-6 tie, then the tiebreaker goes to the mayor, but does it only fail because it was an amendment to the motion?
It fails because I chose not to. Yeah.
Okay.
That was my vote. Yeah. Okay, further discussion? All right, seeing none and seeing no one in the audience wishing to comment, we will have a roll call vote on the main unamended motion.
Okay, this is on Carlin and Rowe. Hess.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasica.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
And Harp.
No.
And would any of you like to change your vote? That is 11 ayes and 1 nay.
And the motion carries. We have no additional committee reports. We do have an item of new business this evening. Mr. Von Lossberg.
Sorry, getting organized here. One moment. Thanks. I'd like to recommend we adopt a resolution of the Missoula City Council calling for a municipal government general election for mayor and all wards and 3 municipal court judges to be held on November 2nd, 2021. And I won't try to speak to this, but I would happily defer to Marty to explain why we're doing this.
Thank you, Mr. Von Lossberg. Ms. Rabine.
City Council members, I'm Marty Rabine, your Legislative Services Director and City Clerk. We received a message from the Elections Office that noted that the resolution that you passed concerning the calling for the mail ballot election and for the primaries for the offices did not include a message saying that we were calling the general election. And so they asked City Council to pass a resolution that sets the general election date for election day on November 2nd. So that is why this resolution is before you. And the reason why it is before you as new business is its deadline is today. So that's why we're taking it up tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rabine. We're always on top of it. Discussion on the motion. Ms. Anderson.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. I am happy to support this item of new business. And I just want to thank Bradley and the elections office for always making sure that our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed. And those guys do great work over there, and they are by the book, and they caught our little mistake, and we appreciate that, and happy to support fixing that tonight.
Well said, Ms. Anderson. Further discussion? Right, seeing none, we will have a roll call vote on the resolution.
Jones. Sorry, Gwen, I think you're muted.
She apparently looks like she can't unmute.
She gave a thumbs up. I'm going to interpret that as a yes. Merritt.
Yes.
Ramos.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
Vasika.
Yes.
Von Lossberg.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Becerra.
Yes.
Contos.
Yes.
Hart.
Yes.
And Hess.
Yes.
Would any of you like to change your vote? That's 12 ayes.
And the resolution is approved. There will be an election on November 2nd. We will be now back in order with council comments, and I appreciate that request from Mr. Von Lossberg. That was a good thing to do. We'll begin council comments with the upper left-hand corner of my screen. That's Ms. Anderson at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always fun. You never know when your number is going to get up because your screen is different than mine. Just want to thank everyone in our community for taking the time tonight to provide your comments around the JEDI resolution, and look forward to hearing more from our public on that over the course of the next week. And I really appreciate the staff taking the extra time tonight to really walk through a really thorough presentation that I hope really is able to allay any fears that anyone in our community has that this is somehow not a good thing, but that it's really, its purpose is to, work for our city and our community to be as best as we can be. And so just thank you so much for that, and look forward to hearing from more folks over the course of the next week. And enjoy the lovely smoke-free days. Get out and enjoy them while you can. Thank you.
Mr. Ramos.
Pass. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Merritt.
I would like to give a shout out to everyone who has persevered to bring forth the proposed purchase of the Bridge Apartments. This is so critical. Given the housing environment that we're in right now, preserving these homes for people with disabilities is absolutely critical. Putting these people out on the street right now could very well mean dozens for them. So when the mayor contacted me and told me that the city was going to get a crack at purchasing the bridge, I have had a smile on my face, at least in my head for the last many hours since I've heard that. So I just think that it's so important. It is a complicated thing. I know that the city laying out another $2.2 million to purchase property is something that many folks maybe don't understand very well, but we will move through this process. It will be open, and information will be shared, which is something that has not happened up until now. And I really hope that this will provide a good outcome for those residents, and that we will be able to keep them all in their homes. Thanks.
And Ms. Jones.
Thanks. Sorry, my computer was not responding earlier. Yes, I vote yes on that resolution, Marty. And I wanted to also just note the good news about the bridge apartments. It's wonderful for this community. So I'm happy to see that going forward. And I just also wanted to briefly mention that the Missoula County Fair starts this Wednesday and goes until Sunday. So last year, of course, the fair was extremely modified down due to the pandemic. I think it's back in force this year and lots of wonderful new stuff there. So I hope people can get to the fair. There is no admission. You just walk on in and you spend your money inside. So lots of nonprofits are trying to make money there. Help them out and check it out. Thanks a lot.
And Mr. Contos.
I'm good, thank you.
And Mr. Von Lossberg.
Pass, thank you.
Ms. Herp.
I'm going to echo Julie's comments about the bridge apartments. This is a form of naturally occurring affordable housing, also known as NOAA, and it provides an opportunity for our community to actually capture, if you will, some affordable housing that still remains in our community for our most vulnerable. So, Mayor, please negotiate away. My second comment is I just wanted to really put out a shout out to the staff of both Missoula in Motion and Community Planning, Development, and Innovation. Just yesterday was Sunday Streets in Missoula in the Franklin to the Fort neighborhood, and it was just spectacular. I think we had a break from the rain, but we needed the rain, so I think everybody was fine with it. But then the sun came out, and it was just so wonderful to see our community strolling around, biking around, and just learning more about each other and seeing such a diverse neighborhood. So Julie, Sandy, I am so proud of your neighborhood. It's a great one.
And Ms. Osika.
Thank you. And thanks, Ms. Harp. I do agree. It is a wonderful neighborhood. I didn't speak to it earlier, but regarding the bridge apartments, the main reason why I didn't vote for that one is because from my understanding is that it was originally purchased with public dollars, taxpayer dollars. So I just don't really like the double dipping. And so I'm sure that this will come back up in council when we actually do purchase it, and we'll have a robust discussion about that then. Other than that, thank you all for your time this evening.
Mr. Hess.
Pass, thank you.
And Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks. I'm excited about the bridge apartments too, but I'm going to make another plea. I hate to go back to this, but for people to go out and get vaccinated. Our hospitalizations due to COVID are going back up. Anyone that is watching the news and paying attention understands that this is affecting non-vaccinated people at a significantly higher rate, somewhere in the 90s than vaccinated people. So, it's time to go do it. If you have hesitancy about it, or you just haven't gotten around to it, it's time to get it done. We have kids going back to school. We want them in school. I was at a restaurant last night and walked in forgetting to put on a mask and put it on. And the hostess said, "Thank you. I have kids that cannot be vaccinated, and I'm worried about that, and I'm being careful." So I also would give a plea that even if you are vaccinated, there are a lot of people that are in situations that have loved ones that are not or cannot be. And so please respect that and go get vaccinated, please.
And Ms. West.
Thanks. I just wanted to remind people that the fair is this week. I know that's been mentioned already, but specifically if you want to, the 4-H FFA animal auction is on Saturday morning, starting at 8 a.m. And I hope that some of you might come and bid on some awesome animals, maybe a pair of a trio actually of layer chickens that my kids will be pulling around the auction ring. So they're sapphire gems and they're beautiful and they lay great eggs. So I hope to see lots of folks there. Thanks.
And Ms. Becerra.
I will pass. Thank you.
Thank you all. We have, are there any additional items to be referred this evening? Seeing none, any miscellaneous communications reports, petitions, or announcements? Seeing none of those, as always, I thank you for your service and enjoy this clear air and semi-crisp weather